As has seemingly become our tradition here on the channel every January, I like to look back over the previous year of cars in updates for Gran Turismo 7 and rank the 10 best. And it was actually a really strong year in 2024. We had, by my count, 31 new cars added. Ironically, a really good year for vehicles, definitely not for circuits though. There was a strong mix of fan favourites coming back and some very impressive debuts as well. A couple of controversial ones also, which of course we'll get into. And for the sake of keeping things efficient so that you know how to break down the video, I'm splitting it into two parts. The first part is I'm going to do a quick refresher of all of the cars that were added, so then you could pause the video, make your own little list in the comments, maybe your favourite, your top 5, top 10, even ranking all of them if you wanted to, and then once I've run through all of them, I'm going to give you my personal top 10 best of the year, and I'm only actually going to rank my absolute favourite of the year. The rest won't be any particular order. So let's jump into the refresher list first. The Mitsubishi Evo 9, the Renault 4, the 2009 Audi TT S Quattro, the Bulgari Vision GT, the Genesis X Gran Berlinetta, the Toyota TS20 GT1 race car, the Lamborghini Urus, the Audi R8 V10 Plus, the Chevy Chevelle, the Skoda Vision GT, the Sony Afeela, the GT500 Honda NSX race car, the Volvo 240 SE Estate, the Nissan R31 Skyline GTSR, the Honda Civic SIR2, the Volvo V40, the Ferrari 430 Scuderia, the Lamborghini LP560, the 1999 shape Subaru Impreza rally car, the BMW E36 M3, the Roof RGT 4.2, the Group 1 racing version of the Genesis X Gran Racer, the Toyota Hiace van, the Mitsubishi Evo 8, the facelift final generation 2024 Nissan GTR, the Porsche 911 Turbo S, the Ford Escort RS Cosworth, the 1955 Mercedes W196R Grand Prix car, the Porsche Mission X, and then of course the pair of Suzuki Jimneys, and unless I've missed any, that was my count for all of the cars added during 2024. So even though the number may initially not seem that impressive, I actually think that's a very, very strong selection of cars which were added during 2024, which is quite cool to see this far out from the game's release. Now of course you could take a moment, compile your personal top whatever down in the comments, and now of course I'll get into mine. As I said, I'm not going to do these in any particular order until the very last one, which will be the car that I personally like the most, which were added during 2024. My top 10 would be, again, in no order, the Mitsubishi Evo 9. I considered putting the Evo 9 and the Evo 8 together into one, but that's a bit of a cheat, and ultimately I would definitely see in the comments before they were added a lot more love and a lot more clamour for the Evo 9 to come back. So comparing that with how good it was, I think I would go for the Evo 9 between the two, even though I do prefer the Evo 8. Next up, the Lamborghini Urus, a car which will always divide opinions because of its Audi SUV underpinnings, but to me it was a very important kind of car to see in Gran Turismo. We have precious few pickups and SUVs in the game, and the fact that it's not just an SUV but a genuinely properly quick one, well, to me that's very cool. Plus a wildly different approach to Lamborghini compared to all of the others in the game. My next pick will definitely be controversial because this isn't so much about what the car can do or even how often I use it or don't use it, it's because of what it means for the franchise and for fans. The Skoda Vision GT. No, it is not among the absolute best of Vision GTs. I actually do use it occasionally, which is more than I can say for many of them. No, it didn't necessarily deliver what some of us were hoping for, but to me, the fact that it is Skoda finally coming to Gran Turismo is more than enough, regardless of how good the car itself is, to be one of my top 10 picks from the year. Next up, in a very similar vein, not a car which I use all that often, but I know many of you do, the Volvo. In particular, the Volvo 240 Estate. Not only because it's an iconic meme car from the franchise in way better tuning form now because of engine swaps and stuff like that, but because of course, Volvo coming back. So much like with Skoda, even if it's a car that I don't use that often, it's very, very important to me to have more and more brands featured in Gran Turismo, both returning and, in the case of Skoda, some debuts. The next one is a car which I personally don't really care for that much in real life or in the game, but again, it's a fan favourite like the Evo 9, and to me it's a very, very significant one to add to the game, the E36 BMW M3. Of course it's an icon, and thanks to the E30 finally joining the franchise from day one in GT7, this was really the only missing link in the chain of those most iconic M3s. So to finally have it, and for it to be a really good car to use, well, that's just the cherry on the cake. The next two are kind of intrinsically linked, but I love them each for different reasons. One, because it was surprisingly good. In fact, one of the most OP cars of its type in the game, and the next one because I already knew it would be good, I said it would be good, and it is good. First up, the roof, the RGT 4.2. This car is a monster. The fact that it has one of the craziest wide bodies in the game is immediately hilarious to me. With rear-wheel drive, it somehow manages to be one of genuinely the best all-round exotics. Just to use at really any point level within its tuning range is a testament to how good of a car this is. It looks fantastic, it has huge tuning potential, and it's nice to see some love for roof for a change rather than just the usual Porsche love. Speaking of not being surprised though, well, that brings us to the next one. Of course, it was going to be the 911 Turbo S. The Porsche 991 is a superb platform. Anyway, this thing is a monster, and it's a forgiving monster, crucially. Of course it was going to be good. There was no universe in which a 911 Turbo wasn't going to be good of any generation, and I do find it quite curious the lack of 911 Turbos which we have in the game, which is very strange. You've got a couple, and considering all the different representation of 911s which we've got, it's kind of strange that one of the most iconic overall models, that being the Turbo, is kind of hit or miss. It's cool to see this one added, and it is a superb car. And the single most OP advantage of this one over the roof is of course the four-wheel drive. The fact that it has such a similarly brilliant overall ability, but such a different profile in terms of handling and road manners, it's interesting to compare the two, to say the least. The next one I think will be on pretty much everyone's list probably for the year, the Escort. Of course, the Ford Escort RS Cosworth, the whale tail legend, not so much because it's one of my absolute favourites. Of the two, I think I actually probably prefer the Sierra RS 500 in real life, but in the game, there's no contest. I much prefer the Escort. It's immediately better, immediately quicker straight out of the box, on-road, certainly off-road, and again, it's one of those legendary cars which players have wanted for years, and now we've finally got it. We've had Deltas, Quattros, Renault 5s, Peugeot 205 T16s, various other rally legends, even obscure ones like the Nissan Silvia 240 RS, but never this one of the most obvious ones to have. We had the rally car, but that was the closest we could get. Now it's here, and it's very good. The second to last pick for me is one which again might be a surprise to some people, and probably more so because the people who would be surprised by this pick probably just haven't bothered buying the car yet, and that is the High Roller, the most expensive single car from the entire year, one of the most expensive cars, if not the most expensive, if I recall correctly, of all of the updates so far, the Mercedes Grand Prix car, the W196R, because not only is it a true return to form for the High Rollers category, being a full, unapologetic 20 million credit car, it's actually really good. It is a great car to drive. The tyres are definitely OP, but even then, this thing is sublime to drive. It's not the prettiest of these cars in my opinion. I do prefer some of the fully enclosed Streamliners from that kind of era, but either way, this is a great throwback to stuff like the Audi Streamliner back in the day on Gran Turismo, and it's also a nice little nostalgic nod for those of us who played stuff like Toca Race Driver 3, where you would have stuff like this, and for many of us, certainly for me, that was my first time playing a PS2 game in that form, to have cars like that in the game. But even aside from all the retro nostalgia, it is just a genuinely good classic car. It's got a bit of tuning that you can do to it as well, bump up the power, and it is quick. Is it worth buying over some more affordable classics, or just tuning up a car in general? Well, not necessarily, but if you do buy it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. And some of you will of course have noticed what will obviously be my number one of the year. There is no way that me of all people would not include it already in the list, unless it was going to be my number one. I feel like this one might be the number one for at least a few of you, if not many of you, the Toyota GT1. Of course, the Toyota TS20 race car. This is such a fantastic return, and also somehow feels like a new addition at the same time. I love this car's return for so many reasons. Number one, it has always been one of my favourite prototype cars. Number two, it's one of the most iconic cars of Gran Turismo's entire history, up there I would say with stuff like the Suzuki Escudo. Number three, finally having the car with a detailed interior in full HD glory. It's about damn time. Number four, it's a Group 2 car, which is wildly different to what it was in the past. It used to be presented as the best of the best, and then as some of the more old school, crazy, powerful cars came in, you started to notice maybe some of the cracks in this car's armour where they could beat it, like a Sauber C9 or an R92CP just in terms of sheer power. Perhaps even a Minolta, which would also be nice to return, but now that it has returned and that it's more realistically portrayed in the game, I think that's great because it means it ends up in Group 2 instead of Group 1, and this thing is a monster in Group 2. In Group 1 it would have been fine, and that would have been about it, but there was no real reason to use it in Group 1. It wouldn't have been quick enough by actual standards, but in Group 2 it feels perfect. Fantastic rivalries and one of the most solid all-round picks. It is a pleasure to use. The bonus thing on top of all of this is with those very subtle visual changes which you can make, you can technically replicate both versions. In fact, I guess you could say all four versions of the GT GT1 which we've had in Gran Turismo, from the iconic white and red in the later games to of course the bird poop car that my old man and me used to call it when I was a kid, of this older livery form. Of course you can change the front end intakes to more perfectly represent that older car. You can also make the stealth version from Gran Turismo 4 pretty easily, and of course you can even replicate the road car. It doesn't have the quad pipes, but it's close enough. I'd love to hear what your favourites were. Like I said, could be top 10, top 5, maybe just your favourite one, or you could go for a mega ranking of going through everything if you wanted to. It will be very interesting to see what happens during 2025. Personally, my hopes for this year are more circuits, because last year was woefully lacking in that regard, which is a shame because having great cars and great tracks would have been a cool combination. So we'll have to see how 2025 goes, and it certainly seems like they still have more in mind for both the demo and for GT7 moving forward, so it'll be interesting to see what they do in the coming year. We still have plenty of vehicles technically due to arrive from the data mining list, and if you're interested to see which ones those are, well, I'm going to be featuring that on the channel soon as well. So stick around for that. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.